So now they want us to believe passport delays are the reason Harry asked to change their last name to Spencer. It doesn't add up, and if you've ever dealt with a manipulative family member, you'll recognize this move. Rewrite the story, deflect the backlash, and play the victim. This story has affected me beyond what I expected it to. I'm incredibly angry about it. It reminds me so much of what I've seen manipulative personalities do. So let's talk about it, but before we begin, here's the intro. Welcome to Revealing the Narc. Join me as I highlight narcissistic traits in celebrities and public figures. Everything here is in my opinion and not professional advice. If you enjoy the analysis, please like and subscribe. 2 days ago, we got headlines that Harry allegedly went to his uncle and asked if they could change their last name to Spencer, Diana's name, instead of Sussex or Windsor. And the public reaction and the family reaction, I'm assuming that Harry and Meghan took that to be brutal because now we're getting this whole new story about why they wanted to change their last name. My opinion, it is a lie. It doesn't make sense. This story fires me up because this is the type of manipulation tactic I've experienced in toxic relationships, and it's time to call it out for what it is. Let's go through this article and talk about it. This article was published in the Daily Mail. It's titled Prince Harry and Meghan Markle Wanted to Change Surname to Spencer Amid Fears Charles was delaying Archie and Betty's passports because the application included HRH titles. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle feared their children's passports were being held up at the behest of their grandfather over the use of their HRH titles. Harry and Meghan are said to have become exasperated about waiting months for their children's passports to arrive and believed it was being blocked due to the use of their royal titles. The couple thought the application would take weeks and suspected it was because they wanted HRH on the children's travel documents. They then began exploring changing their surname to Spencer, a nod to Princess Diana, as revealed by the Mail on Sunday. Okay, let's stop here because this one section is stacked with assumptions disguised as facts. Let's count them. The first one is this belief that the passports were being held up because of King Charles. They're not saying that he intervened, they're saying they felt like he did. And the media is running with it as though it's confirmed. The reality is the passport office says there was no objection from Charles. So this is projection, not proof. The second is that they believe not only it was being held up by the king, but that it was because of the use of these HRH titles. They assume that the passport delay, which could have been anything, could be bureaucracy, typo, or IT failure, but it must be tied to their insistence on including HRH. HRH has been a legal gray area for their family. They know it's disputed, so applying with those titles was already provocative, and then they blamed everyone else for the fallout. And the third assumption was about changing the surname to Spencer. If this story is true, which I suspect it isn't, Harry wants to hurt his family and switch to Spencer, but in order to justify it to himself and make an excuse, he is using this passport as an issue. You don't go from we want HRH on the documents to let's erase the Windsor name entirely and go with Spencer, unless this is about symbolism and not logistics. This is a threat and not a fix. That's them saying if we don't get our way, we'll publicly associate with Diana and cut the royal name altogether. This isn't about documents, it's about dominance. And once it backfired, they're spinning it into we were just frustrated. But the assumptions speak louder than the PR damage control. The article continues, the king hadn't wanted Archie and Lily to carry the titles, most of all the HRH and the British passports once created would be the first and perhaps the only legal proof of their names, a source close to Harry and Meghan reportedly told The Guardian. There was a clear reluctance to issue the passports. Assumption. Who is saying this? Clear reluctance based on what evidence? The king didn't want them to have the title based on what evidence? This is pure assumption wrapped in implication. There's no quote from the passport office, no documentation, no timeline that proves any intentional delay. But by saying clear reluctance, they're trying to imply someone was dragging their feet on purpose, and they're not even proving it. It's manipulative framing. It invites the audience to fill in the blanks with their own outrage while the source stays conveniently vague and unaccountable. And again, if this was really just a bureaucratic issue, they could have just adjusted the application, but instead, they made it emotional, symbolic, and public. The article continues. However, Buckingham Palace has pushed back on the claims the king or any of his staff intervened. When asked if there was any objection from Charles or aides to the passports being issued with the HRH titles, a spokesman said no, but declined to comment further. And so we get this: as soon as the question is asked directly, the palace says no. That's it. No drama, no spin, just no. Which makes all the talk about clear reluctance and King Charles is blocking their application look exactly like what it is: a manufactured narrative. The article continues. On their birth certificates, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex's children have the last name Mountbatten Windsor, but according to reports, their applications used the name Sussex, not Mountbatten Windsor, which Archie had on his previous US and British passports. The average wait for a UK passport is currently around 3 weeks. This whole thing just raises so many questions for me. Why do they want UK passports for their kids now? After all, they live in the United States, they've stepped away from royal duties, publicly distanced themselves from the monarchy. They've said time and time again they will not visit the UK. Harry has said he will not bring his wife and children there. So why do they need this? It's all tied to their strategy. So I'm going to make a couple of statements right now just based on the research I have. Please, if you know more information about it, drop it in the comments. But here are some of the reasons I think that they're pursuing this right now. The first is a UK passport formally confirms British citizenship. That's important if the kids ever want to live, study, or work in the UK in the future, or be tied to royal-related entitlements. Second, if the passports include HRH and the surname Sussex, that becomes a symbolic stamp of royal identity, regardless of their working status. And third, it potentially strengthens their narrative. If those documents were approved as submitted, it could be used to suggest that even official UK institutions recognize the children's royal status, whether or not Buckingham Palace makes a public statement. So while the passports may not be strictly necessary, they carry value, not just for travel, but for image, positioning, and long-term legacy. This isn't about logistics, it's about optics. The article continues, but apparently Harry and Meghan canceled their initial standard applications after 3 months and reapplied using the UK government's 24-hour passport service. Why didn't they start with that? Sorry, you guys. Oh my gosh. Okay, let's continue. But then their online meeting to fast track the applications was eventually canceled at the 11th hour owing to systems failure. Okay, if it's a 24-hour passport service, how is it canceled at the 11th hour? Anything, okay, in my opinion, anything that's happening within a 24-hour period, if it's canceled, I wouldn't call it the 11th hour. The 24 hours is the 11th hour, in my opinion. And now the article continues and says the Guardian source claimed that Harry and Meghan feared officials in the UK were dragging their feet. So because of the system's failure, this is now another proof, another piece of evidence in their minds that the world is against them. And let's explore that a little bit. Now, to be fair, if the average wait for a UK passport is 3 weeks and theirs dragged on for 3 months, I get why they might feel like something was off. That's a long time to wait, especially when you're used to being high priority and you're entitled. But instead of just asking for clarification or adjusting the application, they immediately jumped straight to conspiracy. Suddenly, it's not a delay, it's sabotage. It's not bad processing, it's the monarchy dragging its feet. So yeah, the delay might have felt suspicious, but the story they're now telling about being exasperated and blocked and fearing intervention from the king, that's not just frustration, that's narrative building. That's when it stops being about a passport and starts becoming about control and image. If you're paranoid enough, everything looks like a plot, even a Zoom meeting that didn't load. The article continues. The insider added Harry was at a point where British passports for his children with their updated Sussex surnames were being blocked with a string of excuses over the course of 5 months. I thought it was 3 months. And what are these excuses that they've been getting? Please give us these excuses. Were any of these excuses tied to the king standing in the way? The article continues and says, out of sheer exasperation, he went to his uncle to effectively say, my family are supposed to have the same name and they're stopping that from happening because the kids are legally HRH. So if push comes to shove, if this blows up and they won't let the kids be called Sussex, then can we use Spencer as a surname? Okay, I thought it was the HRH that's the problem. See, this is why, this is how you know this is all make believe. None of this makes sense. Is it the Sussex name that's the problem or is the HRH the problem? And if it's the HRH the problem, just drop it. It doesn't make sense because if the issue is you want to use Sussex and they're not letting you, why is your solution to switch to Spencer, which isn't even a royal surname? That's not a fix. That's a dramatic gesture. It's meant to punish and make a point. If the issue is about unity and family name continuity, then why not go with Mountbatten Windsor? It's already on their birth certificates. This isn't about logistics, it's about emotional leverage. Harry's saying, if I don't get my way, I'll strip the kids of your name entirely. That's not protective parenting, that's reactive storytelling. And you have to feel for children that are in these types of situations. These two parents are so blinded by envy, by rage, by revenge, by paranoia. They're creating problems for the future of their children. The lack of wisdom is astounding. And now, the last part of this article, it says the couple then reportedly asked their lawyers to write to the HM passport office threatening to pursue a data subject access request relating to Archie and Betty's application. Days later, the two passports were reportedly issued with HRH titles and Sussex as the new surname. A spokesman for Harry and Meghan said, we do not comment on private issues pertaining to the Duke and Duchess's. So where did this article come from? Isn't a source a spokesman for Harry and Meghan? These people. And the article finishes off with the Home Office declined to comment. So, looking at this part, they're basically suggesting that they hit roadblocks for months. Harry brought up using Spencer as a surname out of exasperation, and then miraculously, the passports were issued just days later with the titles and surnames they originally wanted. It's not stated outright, but is clearly meant to paint a cause and effect relationship. Like, see, we were right, they were stalling, but once we pushed hard enough and hinted at disowning the family name, suddenly things moved. But let's be real, this logic is incredibly flimsy. If anything, this looks like another example of Harry and Meghan crafting a story where they're both the victims and the heroes, delayed, ignored, but ultimately proven right. Just don't look too closely at how convenient the ending is. And here's where it all comes together. This wasn't about logistics, it's rationalization. Harry wanted to lash out, but instead of admitting it, he packaged it in a passport story to make himself look like the reasonable one. He's motivated by spite and emotional retaliation. But instead of owning that, he creates a more socially acceptable excuse, like concern over passport delays, to justify the behavior. This serves two functions. First is self preservation, so that he doesn't have to admit to himself that his actions are cruel and petty. And the second is image control, so that others won't view him as vindictive, cruel, and petty. There's a psychological term for this. This is rationalization. This is someone who's justifying or explaining away bad behavior that's driven by unacceptable motives, and it's often to avoid guilt or shame. But this is happening alongside moral displacement, shifting blame from one's true motivations to something or someone else to appear morally justified. And at the root of it, in this case, is Harry's cognitive dissonance, the internal discomfort of wanting to act out of malice, but needing to see yourself as a good person. So the brain invents a bridge. It's not revenge, it's bureaucracy. What Harry's doing here is classic rationalization. He knows the real reason he wants to change the family's last name is to hurt his family. It's retaliation, but that's not something he's willing to admit, not to the public and not to himself. So instead, he tells this story about passport delays. It's easier to say we were just frustrated than to say I'm angry and I want to punish my father. And now they're walking it back because the backlash hit harder than they expected. Whether from the public or the palace, the Spencer stunt didn't land. This wasn't about HRH, this was about headlines. And once again, Harry and Meghan are rewriting this story in real time. I'm wondering what you all think about this. Please drop it in the comments. If you enjoyed this video and you're looking for a meaningful way to support something beyond the screen, I'd love for you to consider making a small donation to the National Domestic Violence Hotline in lieu of super chats and super stickers. They provide 24/7 support and resources for people in unsafe or overwhelming situations, whether that's emotional, physical, or just hard to name. If you need to contact them, their information is here on the screen, and you can find the link to their website in the description. Every little bit helps and it means a lot. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. Hit that notification bell so you'll know every time I drop a new video. I want to thank you so much for listening, and I'll talk to you all soon. Bye, everybody.